Hello everyone, welcome to the What If Anime YouTube channel. Today, we are diving into an exciting new story that will take your imagination to the next level. Let's get started. What if Naruto was a sealed demon and accidentally soul bonded with a mortal priest? If you enjoy, then please like, share and do comments, and also check the description box to original creator of this beautiful creation. The bells of the church haven't rung in years. Not for weddings, not for mass, not for anyone but ghosts. Sasuke Uchiha doesn't mind. The fewer people who come near the chapel, the fewer lies he has to tell. He isn't a priest in the way others might imagine. His faith is fractured, calcified by loss and salt. His sermons, when he gives them, are dry and brief. His prayers are whispered out of habit, not hope. His robes are folded neatly but never clean. He keeps the church running because someone has to. Because it was handed to him. Because it's easier than answering the questions people might ask if he left. But mostly because the walls are thick enough to keep the rest of the world out. The church doesn't creak, it breathes, not with the comfort of faith, but with the tired lungs of something ancient and half asleep. The stained glass windows reflect colorless light. Dust swirls in sunbeams like souls caught mid-confession. Sasuke Uchiha walks barefoot down the nave, robes loose around his shoulders, silver-bladed rosary hanging from his wrist like a chain. The cold of the marble doesn't bother him. Nothing does lately, except the feeling. It started 3 nights ago. A pulse just beneath his ribs. An instinct he couldn't name. Like someone whispering in the next room, but just after you've woken up, so you can't tell if it was real. He's performed cleansing rites. He's walked the perimeter, tracing wards into stone with quiet incantations. He sat beneath the crucifix and stared at it until his vision blurred. Still, the presence lingers. It's not malevolent, not entirely, but it watches. And Sasuke doesn't like being watched. Naruto watches back. The bond is new, thin, barely formed, but it's alive. A golden thread humming between their souls, invisible to mortals, vibrating with every breath Sasuke takes. Naruto doesn't know why the bond locked to him. The book hadn't shown a face. The ritual didn't require one, but the moment the connection sealed, he saw the priest. Not truly, not directly, but through a veil made of obsidian glass, like pressing his face against the surface of someone else's dream. At first, the demon thought he'd made a mistake. He expected a wicked man, a warlock, a blood mage or relic hunter, someone dark enough to match his flame. Instead, he got a quiet church, a city of gray rooftops, and a young man with silence carved into his bones. A priest? Naruto murmurs aloud from his place between realms. Really? He leans against the thin edge of the veil, golden light coiling off his arms like smoke. The energy burns slightly where the bond passes through him, like something ancient trying to remember how to be alive. Doesn't talk to God, doesn't kneel, doesn't even bless the bread right. Naruto chuckles to himself, but it's soft. Sad, almost, because the raven-haired man is angry. Alone, always watching the door like he's waiting for something to come through it, but doesn't know what. He recognizes that kind of hunger. He watches the man be bonded with Train in the darkened chapel. Sword slicing through candlelight, movements clean and angry. He watches him sleep with his back to the wall. Eat in silence. Speak only to the shadows. What are you guarding? Naruto whispers. If you've already locked yourself in? Sasuke shivers, just slightly, like someone walked over his grave. Naruto jerks back, his breath coming out ragged. You felt me? The connection pulses just once. Sasuke glances sharply over his shoulder. Naruto's heart, long dormant, beats as a sense of bewilderment and astonishment flows through him. You did feel me. He places his palm against the veil. It glows, the faintest gold ripple. And for a moment, he feels warmth that isn't his. Not physical, not emotional, just the ache of a soul that's still tethered to something. It's so much more than he's felt in centuries. The demon shuts his eyes and exhales. You don't know me, he whispers, barely audible. But you will. Back in the waking world, Sasuke stands frozen in the church. Hand on the hilt of the blade he keeps under his cassock. Nothing moves. But he swears something just brushed the edge of his consciousness. Heat, pressure, a flicker of blue behind his eyes. You're not real, he says aloud, more to himself than to anything else. You're just another ghost, but his hand doesn't lower. And he doesn't sleep that night. He was 8 when the silence swallowed everything. There was blood on the tatami, smoke in the hallways, bodies with open eyes staring at nothing. The scent of iron never left his lungs after that, not even 22 years later. He didn't cry after that night. He couldn't. It was like grief had reached down and stolen even his voice. They told him the fire was an accident, that nothing could have been done, that his parents and brother had passed quickly. They were wrong on every count. Sasuke knew because he'd seen the way his father had shielded his mother in their final moment. The shape of a figure standing in the inferno before vanishing. The way the shadows moved like they were alive. After that night, the 8-year-old boy didn't speak for 3 years entirely. He only slept during the day, and even then, only when exhaustion forced his body to shut down. But one of those nights, when the weight of loss had finally cracked through the numbness, he dreamed of a place that surely didn't exist in the world at all. It wasn't heaven, it wasn't hell, it was quiet, red sky, floating stone, the sound of wind that wasn't really wind, and in the center of it all, a crooked, burning tree that glowed like dying starlight. Sasuke stood barefoot beneath it, small and trembling, in a black shirt torn at the collar. He didn't remember how he got there, but he knew it wasn't a normal dream. And then a figure stepped out of the flames. Blonde, older, taller, radiating heat like a hearth in winter. There were symbols wrapped around his wrists, and eyes cerulean watched Sasuke with something between confusion and worry. The stranger didn't speak at first. He just knelt. Sasuke flinched, out of instinct. But the older boy didn't move closer. Just sat there, arms resting loosely over his knees, a faint smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. "You look like you want to disappear," the boy said, voice warm and worn. Sasuke didn't answer. His hands clenched at his sides. The mysterious boy tilted his head, looking past Sasuke's silence, through it. "But I don't think you're the kind of person who stays down. Even if it hurts." Sasuke's eyes welled before he could stop them. He hated how easily the tears came now, when it was too late for anyone to hold him. "You think you're alone," the blonde continued. "But something tells me, you won't always be." "Why?" Sasuke's voice cracked as he finally spoke. "Why me?" The boy didn't answer. He only smiled again, this time softer. Sadder. Then he reached forward, very slowly, and pressed one warm hand against Sasuke's chest, right over his heart. "Because this," he whispered, "this still works." And then Sasuke woke up. Alone, but for the first time since the fire, he took a breath that didn't hurt as much as before. Present, the feeling in his chest has gotten worse. Heat under the skin, a thread tugging softly behind his sternum, like he's been marked by something he can't see. Sasuke closes the last of the church windows and locks the doors. He hasn't accepted confessions in weeks. Instead, he lights a single candle on the altar, draws a protective seal on the floor with blessed chalk, and kneels with a tattered volume in his lap. One of many he's stolen, inherited, or recovered from forbidden archives. The book has no title, just a cracked leather spine and jagged-edged pages that smell of smoke and mildew. He flips through until the language changes from Latin to something older. Infernal script. The first passage is obtuse, written in metaphor. There are flames that guard as much as they burn. Those cast down may yet be called up, not to destroy, but to tether. He frowns, turns the page, another excerpt. The chain of guardian flame is no ordinary pact. It is neither summoning nor contract. It is tethering, soul to soul. A forgotten bond once used by higher demons to inhabit the world again, felt only by the chosen anchor. Sasuke's breath catches. His fingers brush over the faded sigil etched beside the text. A spiral engulfed in fire, curling inward like a seal. Those who bear the mark may feel heat, presence, or dreams. The tether begins without names. Only time reveals the shape of the flame. He stares at the words, spine stiffening. "What are you?" he whispers. No answer, but the flame on the altar flickers sideways. Sasuke hadn't meant to lower his guard. He hadn't meant to fall asleep with the infernal book still open beside him on the chapel floor, salt circle broken, candle burned low. But exhaustion is a brutal thing, even for an insomniac like him. And so he dreams again. But this time, he doesn't dream alone. It begins as smoke, then stone, cracked marble beneath his boots. Fireflies of golden light drift through the air, and red mist swirls beneath a fractured sky that breathes like lungs. Sasuke realizes almost immediately, this isn't a dream. No, says a voice behind him. It isn't. Sasuke turns and sees him. Blonde, muscular, broad shoulders, dressed in black and orange that glows at the edges like it's stitched from starlight. Pointed tipped ears, obsidian horns on either side, just above his head. Whisker-like lines, 3 of either side of his cheek. Chains hang from his wrists, but they move like decoration now, not burden. His cerulean eyes are bright and open, like he's been waiting. Took you long enough, the demon says with a crooked smile. Sasuke doesn't flinch, doesn't scowl. He just exhales through his nose and looks the stranger up and down. I'd say, get out of my head, but you're probably too spiteful to listen. Naruto's grin widens, unfazed. Well, this is nice. You got sarcasm and brooding down to an art form. You must be a hit at funerals. Sasuke crosses his arms, expression unreadable. If you're trying to charm me, it's not working. Not trying to charm you. Just trying to figure out how someone with the emotional warmth of a broken mirror ended up tethered to me. A pause. Their connection crackles, like 2 currents pressed together without grounding. I didn't call you, Sasuke mutters. You didn't have to. The bond pulled me through when you let your control slip. Don't worry, Naruto smirks. Happens to everyone eventually. I'm not everyone. You sure? The blonde tilts his head. Because you've got the whole tragic loner with a sword and a guilt complex vibe down perfectly. The conversation should be louder, but it isn't. Their words land softly, sharpened by intent, not volume. Beneath each sentence is a beat, shared awareness, shared space. The bond glows faintly between them, gold and violet, twisting around their forms like a rope neither asked for. Sasuke narrows his eyes. So is this what it is? A guardian chain? Naruto's expression changes, just slightly. His voice drops, more sincere. Look, I didn't mean to bind it to you specifically. It was random, a link, not a plan. But now that we're here, I want to understand it. He steps forward. The bond hums. Sasuke doesn't move, but his mind shifts, his control faltering as Naruto brushes against a locked door of memory. Stop. It's a single word, not shouted, not desperate, just sharp, final. The space around them shudders. The bond dims slightly. A lock clicks into place in Sasuke's mind. The demon stumbles back like he's been slapped. You shut me out. I don't like strangers digging around in my head, especially demons. I wasn't digging. Then you're worse than I thought. You're nosy by accident. A long silence. Naruto stares at him, jaw tense. His chains rattle softly at his sides. You didn't ask once to sever our bond since we met. Usually it should have been the first thing a normal person would demand, he says quietly. I'm anything but normal and I'm not planning to, not yet. Why not? Sasuke looks at him. Finally, truly looks at him. Because I don't trust you. Fair, but I also don't think you're lying. Another beat, and I have questions. They stand there. 2 souls tethered by fate, glaring across a battlefield built from memory and flame. Sasuke's gaze is distant, guarded, but not cruel. Naruto's frustration flickers, but behind it, there's curiosity. Admiration, even. He hasn't spoken to someone in centuries, and the first person fate hands him is a sarcastic, half-feral priest with the emotional accessibility of a stone wall. And still, he can't look away. You're a lot, Sasuke states finally, glancing at the sky made by his memories. So are you. Don't follow me into my dreams again. You opened the door. Next time, I'll lock it. You didn't say, close it forever. Sasuke doesn't respond. He turns, his black cloak trailing behind him like smoke, and begins to walk toward the edge of the mindscape, where memory gives way to waking. Naruto watches him go. You can lock me out, he calls, but that thread between us? It's still burning. Sasuke vanishes. The dream ends. Sasuke wakes cold, breath held. The book is still on the floor beside him. The candle is out, but the mark in his chest pulses faintly, warm, steady, like a second heartbeat. He sighs. What the hell have I gotten into? Far away, across the veil, Naruto sits in his crumbling library, fingers trailing across the space where Sasuke once stood. His smile is slow, tired. Yeah, he mutters, you're not what I expected either. But the bond still burns. And for now, that's enough. The following week drags by with the weight of unsaid things. Sasuke doesn't dream since, not vividly, not with doors swinging open and demons stepping through. But the bond lingers in the quiet corners of his waking hours, like the scent of smoke long after the fire has died. A hum beneath his ribs. A low, coiling heat he refuses to acknowledge aloud. It flares when he draws his blade, sings when he chants half-forgotten rites, and once, just once, it pulses when he brushes his fingers across his chest. Not dangerously, not loud, just there, watching, waiting. Naruto feels it too. In his realm of crumbling stone and buried flame, he walks a path that once led nowhere, but now leans towards something, someone. When Sasuke is angry, the pull is sharp. When he's still, it's quiet. But when he thinks, when his thoughts linger on the bond, they resonate. It should feel like a trap. Instead, it feels like an unfinished sentence. I don't get it, Naruto murmurs to the dust-laced air, crouched over a spiraling glyph of broken sealwork. Why him? He drags a clawed finger over the circle. It sparks. He flinches, not from pain, but recognition. The same kind of pulse the bond gives when Sasuke is near the door of their link. He sits back and exhales, slow and long, like it might make sense if he just breathes through it. He's really not what I expected. Not soft, not trusting, not kind, but steady, real, and that shouldn't matter, not to a demon who's been sealed away from everything for centuries. But it does. Sasuke stands at the edge of the village one night, eyes on the tree line, moonlight haloing his profile. The wind brushes his cloak. He ignores the way the place on his chest thrums softly when he thinks about the demon's voice. He blames the bond. Of course it's the bond. It's not the way Naruto sounded more human than half the priest Sasuke has ever known. It's not the way Naruto looked at him, not with hunger or hatred, but like Sasuke was some kind of riddle worth solving. It's just the tether, the accidental link, nothing more. His fingers tighten around the hilt of his sword. And yet, his mind drifts to that last conversation, to the all-knowing yet soft way Naruto had said, "You can lock me out, but the thread between us?" It's still burning. Sasuke clenches his jaw. This should be easy. He should hate this, break it, sever the chain and move on. But he hasn't, and that's what bothers him most. When the bond flares again, it's sudden, strong, like a flare lighting a tunnel. Sasuke stumbles, hand against a tree, breath short. It feels like a whisper under his skin. Not words, but presence. Naruto. Not in the dreamscape, not in his mind, but closer. Somehow. Across the veil, Naruto straightens in his ruined library. His chains rattle, light at the edges. The glyph beneath him cracks, pulsing red and blue. The bond tightens, like a rope being pulled taut. He shudders. What? A sound breaks through. Not a voice. A call. From Sasuke. Unintentional. Uncontrolled, but powerful. In the real world, the chapel's wards flicker. Salt curls at the edges. Candles tremble. Sasuke throws open the chapel doors and steps back into the sacred space and freezes. His chest burns. And not just burns. It glows. It forms a rune where it glows. It feels like a calling. The bond roars. Sasuke leans against the nearest wall to steady himself as he watches on with a heavy breath. He gripes his chest at the abnormal pulsing it makes. The pulsing sound rings in his ear and soon he feels it. He sees him. Naruto is there. Not a shadow. Not a dream. Real. He stands near the chapel's door, eyes wide, breathing hard. His chains shimmer faintly, no longer a binding, but a signature. It grows smaller in size, fitting his wrists like a piece of jewelry instead. A mark of who he is and where he comes from. Sasuke stares at him, stunned. Naruto stares back, just as confused. "Okay," the demon says, voice rough. "So, I'm guessing you didn't mean to do that." Sasuke's hand is already on his sword just as the pulsing of his chest stops. Naruto holds up his hands in surrender. Hey, look, I didn't push through this time. You called me." "No, I didn't. You did. Something in you did. Maybe not on purpose, but I was sitting in my realm minding my own damn business." Do demons ever mind their business? The blonde's mouth opens, closes. Okay, fair. Sasuke exhales sharply, fingers twitching at the hilt. The mark is glowing, so is the bond. It coils around them invisible threads now, red and blue, fire and dusk. Living, changing. The priest's voice is low. Controlled. This pull. It's unnatural. Naruto tilts his head. Unnatural doesn't mean wrong. It means dangerous. It means we're linked. Doesn't matter if we like it. But you're feeling it too, aren't you? Sasuke doesn't answer. Doesn't need to. The silence says enough. And Naruto steps forward further into the chapel towards the priest. The bond tightens. Not like a shackle, but like gravity. Sasuke should stop him, but he doesn't. And that terrifies him more than any demon ever could. The banished realm is empty. The demon is gone. And the bond, once a faint, flickering thread barely perceptible across realms, now thrums like a storm-tethered wire, vibrating with wild, unchained power. Madara feels it first. The Prime Minister of the Order stands atop a tower of black stone, cloak made from threads of abyssal night sweeping behind him like smoke caught in time. His eyes, old and endless, narrow as he turns toward the breach. He's broken tether, Madara says quietly. Not surprised, not angry, interested. Behind him, Obito kneels. His right-hand man's silver armor is charred at the edges where it has touched cursed flame too many times. His one visible eye gleams beneath his mask. Impossible. The seals were etched in 7 layers. He shouldn't have been able to leave. He didn't leave, Madara says. He was pulled. Obito lifts his head slightly. The guardian bond? Madara nods once. Slow, measured. A sound slinks through the shadows. Soft. Serpentine. I told you the boy was unfinished. Orochimaru hisses as he slips from a jagged crevice in the stone wall. Robes trailing like mildew and rot. Too soft. Too lonely. And now it seems he's found someone equally broken to match him. The masked demon's gaze sharpens. You knew this would happen? I hoped it would, Orochimaru croons. Naruto's power is wasted in ruin. But tethered to the right mind, he could be shaped. Molded. Madara's expression darkens. You will not touch him. Orochimaru grins, all teeth. Oh, I don't need to. Not yet, but whoever pulled him across, that's the one to watch. He leans into the shadows again, voice like oil. I wonder what kind of soul binds a demon like Naruto without meaning to. Back in the real world, Naruto stares at the chapel ceiling like it might collapse on him. Okay, he mutters, so this is definitely real. He's sprawled on one of the pews, boots kicked up, fingers behind his head like he belongs there. The stained glass light cuts across his features, shards of green and gold. Sasuke leans against the altar, arms crossed, jaw tight. I should exorcise you. Yeah, you keep saying that. Naruto stretches. But here I am, still not banished, still breathing, still weirdly connected to you by fate and probably bad decisions. The raven head glares, but the energy between them hums, not like a thread, but like a tension waiting for release. People will notice you, Sasuke says finally. They'll feel your presence. The veil between our worlds is thin now. These things, according to my books, if the Order realizes. Too late, Naruto cuts in, smile faltering. They already know. Sasuke straightens. How? I felt it. A snap, like a leash breaking. They'll come looking. You mean your people? Naruto's voice drops. They're not my anything. He sits up, the chains at his wrists gleaming faintly in the light. They exiled me, locked me in that rotting place with nothing but cursed books and a view of my own failure. He looks at Sasuke now. Direct, honest. I don't owe them anything. The priest holds his gaze for a long, quiet moment, then looks away, voice low. Good, because I don't plan on handing you over. Naruto blinks and then smirks. Wow, Tilda, that's progress. I'm touched. Don't be. If you lose control, I'll destroy you myself. The blonde-headed demon shrugs. Still counts as affection, priest boy. Sasuke exhales through his nose. I hate this bond. You keep saying that, but I'm starting to think you hate how much you don't hate it. Sasuke doesn't respond. The bond glows. Warm, subtle. Inspoken, but undeniable. Later that night, as Sasuke sleeps lightly, sword within reach, as always in Naruto walks the woods just outside the chapel for the first time in centuries. He touches bark, runs fingers through stream water, feels the wind move through his hair, real and chaotic and alive. The bond flares as Sasuke dreams. Naruto closes his eyes. He doesn't step in, doesn't break through, just lingers near it, feeling him. You don't even realize, he murmurs, eyes half-lidded. This connection, it's not just fate, it's choice. Beneath all the instinct and accident, something in Sasuke hasn't pushed him away. Not truly. And that makes his heart quickens as excitement and something else he couldn't put a name to courses through his body. Back in the throne halls of the Order, Madara steps into the firelight and speaks with finality. Send a Jinchuriki, track the bond, observe only. Obito and the other members of the Order nods. Orochimaru watches with slitted eyes and a greedy smile. He's not interested in Naruto. He's interested in who the demon is burning for. Naruto balances upside down on the chapel roof. He's been up there for half an hour, boots hooked on the edge, watching the stars like they owe him answers. You're going to fall, Sasuke says dryly from the ground, arms crossed. Won't be the worst fall I've had, Naruto replies. Last one ended with me face down at the doorway of a chapel and your grumpy ass staring at me like I tracked mud in. Sasuke scowls. Because you fucking did, idiot. Still ungrateful. They bicker like this more easily now. The edge hasn't dulled but something else has softened between them. A kind of reluctant rhythm. Still sharp, still sparking, but grounded. In hell, the veil opens. Not with thunder, not with screams, but with sand. Fine-grained, bone-dry, and endless as it bleeds across the obsidian floor of the great chamber in spirals that etch themselves like living calligraphy. The torches along the walls gutter and hiss, their flames shrinking back from the sudden heat. And then comes the figure. A silhouette cloaked and silent steps forward through the whirling grains. His feet do not echo. His presence does not announce itself with fanfare or force. But the chamber feels colder when he arrives. And Madara, throned high on blackened stone, smiles as if he's been waiting. You've come. The figure stops at the edge of the dais. He is not tall, not imposing in the traditional sense, but there is something immovable about him, like desert stone, like a storm held in place only by silence and will. His hood is still drawn, his face hidden, but his power hums, subtle, relentless. A pressure behind the eyes, a dryness in the mouth, a whisper of something ancient just beneath the surface of the skin. A gourd rests on his back, enormous and sealed with cracked kanji that glow faintly under hell's light. He doesn't kneel. He bows, but barely. You summoned me, he says, voice flat as scorched earth. Madara regards him like one does a blade unsheathed. The one inside you, it still sleeps? The hooded figure lifts his chin slightly. It dreams, he says, and listens. There's a flicker of something beneath the hood now. A pale face, red markings, eyes like polished glass, ringed in darkness not from sleeplessness but from the weight of carrying something no human should. Obito steps forward into the torchlight, arms crossed beneath a crimson mantle. We don't need a killer, he says. Not yet. Orochimaru, half curled in the gloom, chuckles like a snake in prayer. No, we need a witness. Someone who can walk the threshold without being seen as a threat. The figure says nothing. The gourd shifts at his back. And if the demon sees him as a threat? Madara murmurs. Obito's lone eye sharpens, voice colder now. Then he'll remember what's buried beneath the sand. The words drop like a guillotine. And for the first time, the figure raises his hood, revealing him fully. The red tattoo of I love burns at the left corner of his forehead. Hair the color of old blood. Eyes pale green and rimmed with insomnia and fury. Gaara, Jinchuriki of Shukaku, the one-tailed demonic beast. Immortal with the power and limits of an immortal, from the creature sealed within him. Madara smiles again as the redhead finally reveals himself. There you are. The room falls still. Even the sand stops spinning. You're to observe, Madara says again. Only that. Follow the bond between the demon and the priest. Tell us how it breathes. Tell us why it burns. Gaara's expression does not change, but the sand at his feet coils tighter. I will not interfere. Obito nods, unless the bond turns dangerous. And if it does, Orochimaru purrs. I do wonder what will break first. The priest's heart. He tilts his head. Or the demon's mind. Gaara says nothing. He doesn't need to. With a sound like wind rushing through a canyon, he vanishes, folding back into the desert that walks with him. The sand follows. The chamber is quiet again. But the Prime Minister's smile lingers, unreadable. Let the waiting begin. Inside the chapel, by candlelight and crumbling scripture, they study. The book that linked them lies open, but the sigils on the page have changed, mutating slowly since the night Naruto crossed over. The forbidden book had crossed with blonde. It has been a week since the demon was uncontrollably summoned by the raven-haired man. Sasuke traces the old words with a gloved finger, brows furrowed. They're adapting. To us, Naruto says, arms folded, gaze thoughtful. Or maybe just to you. The bond only ever responds when you feel something. Sasuke's eyes narrow. What's that supposed to mean? Exactly what it sounds like. I'm the tethered one, yeah, but you pulled. Your soul opened. Sasuke scoffs. It was exhaustion, a crack in the wards. Sure, Naruto leans in slightly. Keep telling yourself that, priest boy. Their eyes meet. The bond pulses. Between them, the light shimmers, not just gold or violet anymore, but something new. A blend, something wholly their own. They test the edges of it. When Naruto tries to walk further than the edge of the chapel woods, the mark on Sasuke's chest sears. He stumbles, collapses to a knee. Naruto feels it too. A sudden weight, like breath being pulled from his lungs. Fuck, he gasps, dragging himself back toward the chapel. That answers that question. Sasuke exhales once the burn fades. We're tethered at a certain distance. Naruto lies in the grass, arms flung wide, chest heaving. Could have been worse. I mean, one of us could have exploded. The raven head levels him a look. That's your baseline? Demon life. Set the bar low, real fucking low. They try again, later experimenting with different radii, emotions, even silence. Every time Sasuke suppresses a thought about Naruto, the bond dims. Every time he accepts something, curiosity, proximity, existence, the bond glows stronger. It's alive, evolving, and Sasuke knows at the back of his head. They'll never be rid of it. That night, Naruto finds him sitting in the chapel, candlelight flickering against stone walls. You've been quiet, he says, voice lower now. The priest doesn't look at him, but his hand is resting lightly on the place where the bond mark pulses beneath his shirt. I've been thinking, oh how dangerous Tilda, Naruto quips, then sobers. About what? Sasuke finally meets his gaze. You're not leaving. Naruto tilts his head, surprised. Didn't plan to, and even if I did, you need me. Sasuke ignores the smugness. But there are rules, he says firmly. Of course there are. The demon sighs out. This is very you. The other stands, voice calm but sharp. 1. You stay out of my dreams unless invited. Fair. 2. You don't touch anything in this chapel or anywhere we go without asking. Books, relics, people. Naruto raises an eyebrow. Noted. 3. If this bond reacts badly again, we find a way to suppress it. The blonde's voice drops slightly. And if it doesn't react badly? Sasuke doesn't answer for a moment. Then says, then we learn to live with it. Naruto watches him. Seriously now, you're accepting this? I'm accepting reality, the raven head says coolly. I can't tear it out of me without tearing out pieces I might still need. Naruto's expression shifts, something warm behind his grin. Well, I've had worse roommates. You're the first living one though. You're not my roommate. You're a temporary affliction. Sure, temporary. Naruto's smile widens. You know you're stuck with me, right? Sasuke's lips twitch. Almost, a smile. I know. The bond glows brighter. Far away, Gaara watches from a ridge, hidden behind veil-forged magic. His sand slinks through the roots of the chapel. He has seen enough. They're not severing the bond. They're nurturing it. Gaara frowns, speaking softly to the shadows. They're not threats. Not yet, but in the back of his mind, Shukaku stirs, growling low. They will be. Living together was a disaster. At first, Sasuke thought he could tolerate it. A demon under his roof. An unwanted link twisting into his soul like cursed wire. But he was wrong. The bond had rules as they've already discovered. And it wasn't passive. It punished them for every sharp word. For every bruise of silence. They tried again, to put distance between themselves. Naruto had gone outside to walk the chapel's perimeter. Just far enough to breathe, far enough to test the bond. 3 minutes later, they were both on the floor, convulsing like struck wires. The pain was instant, splitting. Sasuke felt it in his spine, in his lungs, in the part of him that held back memories. Naruto had clawed his way back inside, half dragging himself through the doorway. The moment they crossed within range, the bond released. I went 30 feet. Naruto had snapped, panting. Next time, go 10. Sasuke had growled. But that was the thing. The range kept shrinking. The more they fought, snapped, scowled, flared, the tighter the bond drew them. 20 feet, 15, 10. Each argument made the distance between them physically shorter. Like the tether hated separation. Like it wanted them closer. The worst came on the third night. It started with a silence too loud to ignore. Naruto stood by the narrow window, arms crossed, moonlight ghosting over his features. The chapel's shadows danced around him, cast by the flickering remnants of candlelight. Sasuke was at the far end of the room, seated stiffly, still wet from the rain he'd walked through just to breathe alone. He'd wanted distance, space, anything to quiet the ever-present hum in his chest, the one that pulsed in time with the demons. But the bond hadn't let him go far. Less than 20 feet now, if that. When he'd passed the tree line, the mark on his sternum had burned like a brand. Naruto had felt it too. And now, he looked as exhausted as the priest felt. "I'm not doing this with you again," Sasuke muttered, eyes narrowing. "Too bad," Naruto replied, still staring out the window. "Because you're already doing it." The raven head stood. "You follow me everywhere. We're linked. You speak as if you want this." The demon turns to face him fully now, his voice quieter but sharper. "I don't know what I want, but I know you're lying to yourself." Sasuke stiffened. Naruto stepped forward, chain swaying faintly with his movement. "You pretend you don't care, but I feel what you feel. That's the worst part of this. When you get angry, I burn. When you get scared," Naruto's expression twisted slightly. "It crawls under my skin. You can pretend all you want, priest, but this bond doesn't lie." "I'm not fucking scared," the priest snaps, shoulders tense. "Yes, you fucking are," the immortal of the two said, voice low now. "You're terrified, not of me, not even of the bond. You're scared of what it asks of you, what it makes you feel." Sasuke's hand clenched. "Shut up. You think I don't know what it's like to lose control?" Naruto kept walking. "You think I don't know what guilt feels like? You bury yourself in silence and salt circles like it'll undo what you've lost." "Shut up. You still hear them when you sleep, don't you? The fire, the screaming." Of course the demon knew because of their stupid bond. And that did it. Sasuke lunges. The punch cracked through the air, a sharp, clean motion. Naruto blocked it, barely, his forearm straining with the impact, making sure to stay in control of his demonic abilities to not hurt the priest. But Sasuke didn't stop. He shoved forward, slamming the demon into the stone wall with a snarl. "Don't you talk about things you don't understand." Naruto, usually cerulean eyes, flashes red and he bares his teeth. "Fucking try me." He grabbed Sasuke by the collar and twisted, reversing their positions in a blink. Sasuke hit the wall this time, shoulder first, breath knocked from his lungs. They grappled. Fists, shouts, half-formed curses. Fury burned between them like a storm barely held back by skin and sinew until the bond ignited, a blinding pulse of heat. Not fire, not pain, force. The air between them was ripped away in an instant. Their bodies slammed together, chest to chest, hips aligned, hands caught mid-motion as if bound in invisible wire. They both gasped. The chapel fell deathly still. The raven-headed man's fingers curled into the demon's shirt. Naruto's palm was splayed flat against the center of Sasuke's chest, right over the mark, where their bond burned bright beneath the skin. They couldn't move. They couldn't breathe. They couldn't lie. Invisible chains wrapped around them, warm, humming with pressure, holding them together. Naruto's breath hitched. His lashes fluttered, eyes wide with something deeper than shock. He blinked down at the priest, lips parted slightly. "Fuck," he curses lowly. "Well, that's new." Sasuke was too stunned to speak. His pulse thundered in his ears, not from the fight, but from the closeness. From the way Naruto's body fit against his, like a piece he hadn't realized was missing. He could feel the way Naruto breathed, could feel the subtle tremble in his fingers where they tangled together. The blonde's voice was quieter now. "You're warm. Fuck off," the priest muttered, breath shallow. They stared at each other, caught in a space where the anger couldn't breathe. Naruto swallowed. "I think the bond is trying to prove a point." "You think?" came a sarcastic response from the raven-headed priest. "It's just kind of hard not to notice when you're pressed up against me like this." Sasuke's cheeks flushed, infuriatingly. He turned his head, but he couldn't look away. Not entirely. The demon tilted his own, slow, like he was memorizing the way Sasuke's lashes curved, the way the furrow in his brow faded when he wasn't scowling. His smile, when it came, was small, almost fond. "You don't flinch when I'm close now," he said quietly, a hint of playfulness in his tone. The other stares at him for a long second, his jaw tight, heart racing even though he convinced himself that it's simply because of the bond. "I'm sorry." The priest blinked, surprised at the pure sincerity that came out the demon's lips. It takes him a while before he could respond. "Same," he grumbles, voice low, sincere. The bond released. The chains snapped like ribbon, falling away without sound. The pressure vanished. They stumbled apart, awkward and breathless. Naruto rubbed the back of his neck, chuckling under his breath. Sasuke turned away, running a hand through his hair, face unreadable. Except for the slight flush that lingered high on his cheekbones. Neither of them said it, but they both felt it. Something had shifted, something had clicked, and it could not, go back. They tried space, they tried compromise, they failed. Naruto was too loud, too curious, too stubborn. Sasuke was too quiet, too haunted, too alone. The bond flared every time they misread each other. It didn't care for personal boundaries. It wanted something else. Something neither of them understood. One night, about 5 days later, Sasuke couldn't sleep. He lay on his back, staring at the chapel ceiling. Naruto was curled up on the floor near the hearth, his chains slack and quiet, his breathing steady. But Sasuke's mind kept drifting, pulling him back, his eyes now closed. And then, flame. The memory was almost always the same. Dark skies, smoke-choked air, his home eaten by fire. He was 8 again, barefoot, bleeding, running through ash and broken glass, screaming his brother's name. His mother's face burned as she told him to run. His father collapsed, holding her, eyes wide, unmoving. Sasuke stopped at the center of the living room, surrounded by ruined tatami. The flames spoke, they hissed, they grew, and always, he faced it alone. But not this time. This time, the fire parted, and a silhouette stepped through. Unburned, calm, solid. He didn't smile, didn't speak. He just walked towards the boy like he belonged in the memory. Like the nightmare recognized him. Young Sasuke stumbled back, heart thudding. "You're not, I am," Naruto said, voice low. "The bond lets me see what hurts you." He stepped forward again. Sasuke wanted to scream at him. Tell him to get out. That this wasn't his. That this fire had swallowed his family, not Naruto. But then the immortal did something no one else ever had. He knelt and opened his arms. "I'm not here to take it," he murmured. "Just to stand with you while it burns." And the 8-year-old broke. He didn't cry, but he stepped forward and didn't pull away when Naruto held him. He woke in silence, breath sharp, eyes dry, the fire still in his throat. But Naruto was real, sitting at the edge of the bed, eyes shadowed and watchful, like he hadn't moved all night. His palm flat against the priest's. "You saw it," Sasuke said hoarsely. Naruto nodded. "Yeah, before I felt it, but now. Don't talk about it." "I won't." A beat. Then, quietly, "Thank you." Naruto blinked. "What?" "For not leaving." In the dream, the demon gave a soft laugh, surprised and raw. "You think I could leave, priest?" he said gently. "I'm chained to your soul." A pause. Then, softly, "Sasuke." Naruto looks at the man with a raised brow. "Huh? It's my name." The silence stretched afterwards for a moment. But the bond between them hummed, warm this time. Not in demand, just waiting. Naruto nodded once. No jokes, no grin. "Mine's Naruto." The bond pulsed between them. Not pulling, not punishing, just there. Sasuke lays back down. Naruto stayed where he was. And for the first time, they both slept. Together. It took days for the memory to settle again, but this time it was different. Not intense, not cold, soft. Sasuke brewed tea that morning with quiet hands. Naruto sat on the chapel windowsill, one knee tucked up to his chest, sunlight catching in the gold strands of his hair. Neither of them had spoken yet, and neither of them needed to. The bond, for once, wasn't buzzing or pulsing or burning. It was, still, like the string between them had relaxed into something less violent. A thread instead of a chain. "Are you always this quiet in the mornings?" Naruto asked, finally breaking the silence. The raven head poured the tea into a chipped ceramic cup. "Only when I don't want to hear myself think." The blonde smirked. "So, always." There was no bite behind the words. No spike of anger or tension in the bond. Sasuke passed him the cup, their fingers brushing briefly. They didn't flinch. Naruto's pav, he'd never been comfortable with stillness. Hell was never still, even in his dull realm. There was always noise, scraping of metal, the slow, choking crush of centuries stacked atop centuries. Chains didn't sleep, neither did the memory of how he got them. But now, here, in this chapel of flickering light and cracked tile and that ridiculous salt circle still half scuffed into the floor, he was starting to understand something. Sasuke wasn't just solitude, he was silence survived. Naruto caught himself watching him more often now. Not just because of the bond, but because of how Sasuke moved, how deliberately he breathed, how tightly he coiled all the emotions the demon could feel but couldn't always name. He'd expected a reluctant host, maybe a furious priest with holy water at the stake. He hadn't expected this haunted quiet, this sharp mind, he hadn't expected Sasuke, and he hadn't expected to want to stay. Sasuke's pav, the bond was no longer unfamiliar, but it was no less confusing. He couldn't decide what annoyed him more, that he could feel Naruto's moods bleeding into his own, or that he could recognize them now. There was an ache in his chest that came and went, rhythmic and low, usually strongest when Naruto left the room for too long. Distance was shrinking. Every argument they had shortened the invisible tether between them, as if the bond grew impatient with their stubbornness. The first few days after that night he had allowed Naruto in his dream, had granted them nearly 100 yards of freedom. Now, Sasuke couldn't go beyond 30 without a dull, insistent pull in his lungs. It felt like gravity, but personal. Like the blonde had become a second axis around which his body had learned to orbit. He hated that he didn't hate it. He still watched Naruto when he wasn't paying attention. Watched the way he smiled, even when he didn't feel like it. Watched the way he reached out without asking, like touch was the only language he still trusted. Sasuke wasn't used to people staying. Naruto? He hadn't left. That alone said too much. Far away, beyond the veil, Gaara watched. He stood in a dry hollow of shadow, surrounded by sand that listened more than it moved. The scene unfolded in soft glimpses through the tether that Gaara alone could see, faint threads of light flickering like ghost fires in his eyes. Sasuke and Naruto, not circling each other like enemies now. Not yet allies, not quite lovers, but close, dangerously close. Behind Gaara's eyes, the beast stirred. See, boy, I told you, that tether was never a mistake. It's becoming what the Order fears. Harmony between opposite bloods is a threat. Gaara didn't answer aloud. He simply let the wind stir his cloak as his eyes narrowed. They were growing stronger. Not just in magic, not just in bond, but in their understanding. The kind of strength that made fools and gods alike anxious. Madara had said to observe. Obito had said to wait. Orochimaru hadn't said anything, but his silence always meant plotting. And still, the Jinchuriki watched. He watched the moment Sasuke handed Naruto a book without sarcasm. He watched the demon say thank you like it was a habit he was learning for the first time. He watched their connection flicker like a heartbeat beneath their skin. Soon, they would need to know the truth. Soon, they would no longer be two souls tangled by accident. They would become something far more deliberate. And when that happened, Gaara would decide, for himself, what to do. Until then, he waited. Back in the chapel, Naruto laid on the floor beside the long disused altar, arms behind his head, staring up at the vaulted ceiling. The priest sat nearby, book in his lap, pretending not to watch him. The immortal rolled his head lazily to the side. What? He asked, grin soft. Sasuke blinked. Nothing. Liar. The raven head rolled his eyes. But there was no fire behind it. Not tonight. I was just thinking, he said finally. Naruto turned fully toward him, brow arched. About? How strange this all is. Yeah, Naruto replied, grin fading into something quieter. But it's not all bad. They looked at each other for a long moment. The bond between them didn't buzz this time. It hummed, in interest, in joy. In hell, unrest stirs beneath the throne. The chamber of the Order burns dimly, lit not by flame, but by presence. Madara sits unmoving on his obsidian seat, one hand draped over the armrest like a lazy god. His eyes are shut, but his attention is sharp. Beside him, Obito leans in silence, arms crossed, cloak as still as the grave. Across the hall, Orochimaru kneels, smiling, too wide, too still. I've waited long enough, the serpent whispers, voice slithering like smoke. The Jinchuriki's silence speaks louder than any report. Let me join him. Let me see the bond myself. Madara opens his eyes slowly. The weight of eternity behind them. No. Orochimaru's smile doesn't falter, but something in his gaze sharpens, curdling at the edges. I merely wish to be of use to the order, he hums. Obito answers coldly. You wish to touch what doesn't belong to you. I only wish to understand it. Insolent, Madara murmurs, his tone firm, and he's closing his eyes again. Gaara remains our eyes. You will not interfere. A long silence follows. Orochimaru bows his head, fluid, composed, obedient. But beneath the veneer, his thoughts coil like venom in a fang. Later, in the hollow halls of his own domain, Orochimaru's true expression emerges. Hungry, coiled, gleaming with interest. The Prime Minister watches too slowly, he murmurs. His right hand sees only threads. He raises a single hand. A ripple of space parts like torn silk. And from the dark mist steps a figure cloaked in fine shadows and finer teeth, slim, pale, spectacles gleaming. He moves with grace and something inhuman just beneath the skin. You called, he says, adjusting his glasses without looking up. Orochimaru smiles. A whisper only for the faithful, he purrs. I have a task for you. The figure straightens. Composed, curious, dangerous, not quite demon, not quite human, more like something made in a tube and sharpened over centuries. The priest, Orochimaru says softly. And the sealed one, find them. The man inclines his head. And the Jinchuriki? If you can, but don't touch him. Understood. As he turns to vanish again into the folds of shadow, Orochimaru finally speaks his name aloud, like a curse and a promise. Go, Kabuto. The chapel was no longer quite so haunted. Naruto had taken to falling asleep on the windowsill or the roof, legs dangling over the edge, head tilted toward the stars. He said he liked the wind, said it reminded him he wasn't alone anymore. Sasuke hadn't kicked him out yet. That counted for something. Tonight, they sat across from each other at the small table by the altar, eating in near silence. 2 bowls, 2 mismatched spoons, 1 candle flickering between them. I used to eat alone, Naruto said suddenly. Sasuke glanced up. Me too. They didn't say anything else for a while. But it was enough. Later, when the candle had burned lower, the priest sat near the fire, legs drawn up, cloak draped over his shoulders like armor. Naruto stretched out beside it, watching the flames, gaze soft. You don't have to tell me anything, the blonde started, voice quiet. But I feel it sometimes. That memory you keep locked away. That dream I entered. Sasuke didn't move, didn't flinch, just stared at the fire. It was my home, he murmured. Years ago, there was fire everywhere and I couldn't breathe. Sasuke says shortly, his tone blank, numb. Naruto blinked. He knew this from seeing the vision of the dream a while ago where he had comforted 8-year-old boy. My family was inside. A long pause. The bond between them pulsed, not painfully, but like a heartbeat mourning with him. I got out. They didn't. Naruto didn't say I'm sorry. He didn't offer pity or platitudes. He just shifted closer, barely brushing Sasuke's shoulder with his own. Sasuke didn't pull away. Later, beneath the stars, the blonde turned toward Sasuke, face open. I wasn't always alone, you know. The raven-haired man raised a brow. I was sealed. They said it was for my own good. You must have pissed someone off. Naruto grinned. A few, probably. Sasuke smirked, but then his eyes softened. How long? The demon tilted his head back. Centuries. I didn't count. And the book? I found it by accident. It was left behind in my library, written in old blood. Thinking about it, I'm not sure it was meant to be there. He looked over. Sasuke didn't look away. Their bond glimmered softly between them, like the memory of light through stained glass. And then, admission. Quiet. Honest. Sasuke's eyes lowered to Naruto's mouth before flicking away. You're not hard to look at, he muttered. The immortal blinked, then slowly smiled, slow and golden and genuine. Well, I was gonna say it first, but I thought you'd either stab me or try to exorcise me. Sasuke gave him a sideways glance. Don't tempt me. I'll take my chances. Naruto leaned back, arms behind his head, pretending his heart hadn't skipped the way it had when the man said those words. Pretending he didn't feel the heat along his spine when their eyes met. Sasuke looked away again, annoyed with himself and also not. The tension between them no longer felt like something to fight. It felt like something waiting. The Jinchuriki continued to watch, and this time even he didn't know what he felt. Not fear, not envy, not suspicion, but something deeper, a wordless understanding of what was building between the priest and the demon. Even the sealed beast within was understanding the blossoming relationship between the two. Something the order had not planned, something the bond itself had begun to choose. Far from mortal soil, in a cavern of black glass and bone-white roots, a pair of silver lenses gleamed. He moved like a whisper, a shadow in pale skin and unnerving calm, with long fingers that rarely trembled unless they were carving. Kabuto moved in silence across worlds, a thin line of dark magic humming along his spine, a trail left by an invisible hand, one he answered without question. The order had not sent him. Orochimaru had, and Orochimaru's orders were clear. Find the priest, find the demon, learn the shape of their bond. The silver-eyed man smiled faintly, pushing his glasses higher on his nose as the scent of sulfur and old power brushed his senses. He could feel it, threadbare but growing, the signature of something forbidden, something dangerous. In the world above, the priest and the demon were still trying to figure out how to live. It wasn't easy. Naruto had burned another pot of rice, set the chapel rug on fire by accident, and asked 1,000 questions Sasuke had no interest in answering. Sasuke, for his part, slammed doors and muttered curses in Latin. He locked the demon out of rooms he didn't own and left passive-aggressive notes everywhere. It was domestic warfare by way of magical compulsion, and beneath it all, the bond pulled. Harder each time they argued. Shorter, too. The distance between them, how far they could roam without pain, was shrinking even more than before. A fact they both noticed yet neither mentioned again. And still, it was changing. Something warm was threading into the discomfort. Familiarity, maybe. Or something with sharper teeth. That night, after a tense dinner and too much silence, Sasuke broke the quiet. "You asked about my family once," he said. Naruto blinked, mid-chew on a burnt dumpling. "Yeah?" Sasuke looked down at his hands. "I told you they were dead. Fire, when I was 8. You were the first to show me no sympathy nor pity." Naruto said nothing. Sasuke shrugged before correcting. "It doesn't need your sympathy." "I'm not giving it," Naruto replied. "I just know what it's like to lose everything and live in the silence after." Sasuke glanced at him, surprised. Naruto grinned faintly, eyes shadowed. "I'm a sealed demon, remember? Banished. I was exiled to a realm with no light, no time. Just ash and memory. For centuries." He said it like a joke. But Sasuke heard the hollow in it. They sat in silence again, less awkward now. A thread pulled tighter, but not painfully. Later, in their separate corners of the chapel, both admitted quietly to themselves. They found the other attractive. Not just physically, though that, too. It was something deeper. The bond hummed every time they passed too close. A warmth, a flicker, something that refused to be named. The warning came with sand. Sasuke was outside the chapel, gathering wood for the dwindling fire when the air thickened, gritty and dry. A pulse of chakra rolled through the clearing. Naruto appeared instantly beside him, brows drawn tight, sensing it too. The wind shifted, the sand gathered, and from it, hooded, quiet, unreadable, a figure emerged, cloaked, with red hair mostly hidden beneath a cloth hood. The air around him crackled, pulsing with pressure. Ancient, dormant, but alive. Naruto tensed. Sasuke reached for the silver sword tucked into his belt. The stranger raised a single hand, not in aggression but in pause. Naruto stepped forward anyway, protective. His body was in front of Sasuke before he even thought about it. The stranger tilted his head. "So it's true," he said softly. "You are soul bonded." Naruto's eyes narrowed. "What do you want?" A pause. And then, "I'm here to warn you." But Naruto didn't move, didn't relax. His fists curled tight. He was staring at the red-haired figure like seeing a ghost. "You're not welcome here," he stated firmly. That earned him a flicker of pain in the stranger's expression. "So you've forgotten already." "I haven't forgotten. I just don't care. I was your closest friend. Yet you left my side when I needed you most," Naruto snapped. "I had no choice." Sasuke stepped in then, voice low. "Who are you?" The stranger looked at him, really looked. "Someone who knows what's coming." The wind surged, and then Naruto moved. A blur of light, golden energy crashing toward the cloaked figure, who dodged just as fast, a tide of sand rising to shield him. They clashed, fire, lightning and wind against sand. The priest backed away, stunned, watching and feeling helpless for the first time in years. But then suddenly, the stranger stopped. "I didn't come to fight," he growled. "And if you'd let me speak, then say it, Gaara," Naruto barked. The red-haired man stepped back, lowering his hood fully to show his face. "The order grows restless," he started. "They know, they feel it, the bond between you, what it's becoming. They're watching you." Naruto froze. The Jinchuriki's voice was low now. "I felt another presence enter the mortal world. One that wasn't mine, someone who I can only guess the order also sent." Sasuke stiffened. "You're saying we're being watched?" Gaara looked between them. One demon, one priest. His gaze lingered on the glow of their bond, now visible in the cold. "Yes, and if you don't understand what you are to each other soon, you won't survive what's coming." He turned, sand swirling at his feet, then vanished into the wind. That night, Naruto sat against the chapel wall, knees drawn up, staring into the hearth. He didn't speak for a long time. Sasuke, half leaning in the doorway, watched him. "You're quiet," he said. "I'm scared." It was the softest Naruto had ever sounded. Sasuke frowned. "Of the order?" "No." Naruto looked at him, eyes too bright. "But what happens to you? If they come for you? If they try to take you because of me?" Sasuke didn't know what to say. He sat down instead, closer than before. Their shoulders touched. "I'm not fragile," Sasuke muttered. "I know," Naruto said. "But you're something I'm not used to wanting." The demon turns slightly and after a moment of hesitation he reaches and gently grabs the raven-haired man's hand in his. A beat passed, the fire cracked, and Sasuke, who had once lost too much to hope, curls his own fingers into the other's hand and lets himself be quiet next to the demon who feared only one thing: losing him. After the run-in with the Jinchuriki, the two warded the chapel with more seals than before, both on high alert even in their sleep. It had taken days to convince Sasuke. Naruto hadn't begged, he was too prideful for that. But the demon's restlessness grew with every passing hour inside the chapel's confining walls. The human realm, even in its muted, half-crumbling form, called to him. It pulsed like a forgotten memory in his chest, aching and alive. Finally, Sasuke gave in with a sigh and a single condition. "You don't leave my side." The blonde hag grinned like the sun broke for him alone. "You'll miss me if I do." "I'll kill you if you do," Sasuke corrected. They both knew it was a lie. The city was more ruined than wonder. Buildings leaned into disrepair, and the streets were lined with the kind of silence that clung to old places, haunted not by ghosts but by memory. Still, there was something in the air. Dust and salt and quiet breath that felt more real than anything Naruto had touched in centuries. They wore protection wards in case something happened. Naruto used his magic to disguise himself as a mortal. He walked close to the priest, not because of the bond, though its dull warmth pressed always at the edge of his senses, but because he wanted to. His fingers brushed Sasuke's sleeve every few steps, sometimes accidentally, sometimes not. The raven head didn't notice, not at first at least. The two turned into the remains of what had once been a town square. Stalls were set up crookedly, selling things that looked too precious for how empty the streets were. Dried fruit, tattered books, worn-out ribbons, and beads. Then voices, high and unmistakably bright, broke through the stillness. "Sasuke-kun!" Naruto's whole body snapped toward the sound. Two women rushed towards them. One pink-haired, dressed with startling precision despite the city's decay, and the other blonde, walking like she owned the ground beneath her feet. "Sakura, Ino," Sasuke greeted, voice flat but polite. He didn't step forward, didn't invite them closer. Not that it mattered. They were already draped over him, arms brushing his, laughter blooming too loud in the open air. Naruto felt it like a punch. Jealousy wasn't a normal feeling for him. Lust, yes, as of recently. Rage, of course. But this sour burn in his gut, this flicker of something deeply possessive was new. "Mine," his innermost demon snarled. He tried to swallow it, but failed when the woman now known as Ino leaned in and brushed something from Sasuke's shoulder. Her fingers lingered too long. Naruto's eyes darkened. He could burn this whole city down. He could summon hellfire right now and it still wouldn't be enough to peel them off him. Sasuke, oblivious, sighed through his nose. The demon couldn't take it anymore. He stepped forward, casual in every way except the tight grip. He wrapped his long fingers around Sasuke's wrist. The raven head turned to him, brows furrowing slightly. Naruto didn't look at him. He looked at the women, and smiled. Too sharp, too sweet. Who are they? He asked. The priest introduced them with a blank look. Neither Ino nor Sakura seemed pleased to be acknowledged after Naruto's interruption. But the blonde demon didn't care. He stood closer than necessary. Close enough that their fingers touched. Two men eventually wandered over, breaking the tension with quiet nods and more grounded conversation. They were later introduced as Shikamaru and Choji by the priest. Naruto said nothing else the entire time, just stood there, claiming space. When they left the square, the immortal didn't let go of Sasuke's wrist until they were 2 alleys away. "You were jealous," the raven head finally said, voice unreadable. Naruto blinked. "You noticed? You weren't exactly subtle. They were all over you." Sasuke shrugged. "That's not my fault." Naruto stopped walking. "You liked it?" The other man paused mid-step, turned to him slowly. "I didn't hate it," he said. Then, more honestly, "I didn't notice most of it. I was watching you." Naruto stared at him. "You were angry," Sasuke added, quieter now. "Yeah," the blonde-haired demon thought to himself. "Yeah, I was." They returned to the chapel as dusk fell, soft and gold through broken stained glass. Naruto wandered through the nave, letting his fingers trace the long-forgotten carvings on the pews. Sasuke walked past him, moving toward one of the dusty altar tables, something unreadable in his posture. They crossed paths in the corridor, heading opposite directions, and just like before, their shoulders brushed. Only this time, Naruto stopped. Sasuke did too. Neither moved. A breath passed, then another. The silence swelled between them. Naruto turned. Sasuke turned at the same moment. And the moment was too full. Too much. They both leaned in, whether to speak, to confront, to challenge. Neither would later remember. Their mouths met instead. It was a brush of lips. Too soft, too accidental, but it landed. They both froze, breath caught in their throats. Naruto's hand twitched, as if to hold him there, but he didn't push. They stayed close. The priest's eyes opened slowly, wide and disbelieving. His face flushed, pale pink rising from his throat to the tips of his ears. I didn't mean." "You didn't pull away quickly," Naruto said, voice low. They stared at each other. Sasuke's heart raced. He hated it, wanted it, didn't understand it. The demon tilted his head, as if memorizing the priest's expression. "You fit, you know," he murmured. "Right here, with me." Their bodies were close. Too close. Close like the bond demanded, like the air itself wanted them pressed together. The raven-haired man pulled back, but only just. "Don't make it something it's not." The demon smiled, small and devastating. "You always say that when you want it to be something." Sasuke turned away before his mouth could betray him. Naruto didn't chase him, but that night, when their fingers brushed in the dark again, neither of them let go. Naruto rolls over again and again where he lays. It wasn't just the kiss, it was the way Sasuke had leaned in, just a fraction, just before their lips touched. The way he hadn't immediately shoved him away. He wanted it too, even if he didn't say it, even if he didn't understand why. Naruto's fingers curl restlessly against the chapel pew. "I should have kissed him longer," he mutters aloud to himself, then groans, dragging his hands through his blonde hair. "Oh devil, I'm pathetic." Sasuke is worse. He hasn't stopped pacing the dusty chapel's library for an hour, fingers twitching with every step. His thoughts are a war zone. That kiss wasn't supposed to happen. Nothing about this bond was supposed to happen. Demons weren't supposed to feel gentle. They weren't supposed to look at him the way Naruto did, like he saw every bruise Sasuke never said aloud. His heart had raced like it hadn't since the fire. And that terrified him more than any ancient curse. By late evening, they find themselves in the small chapel kitchen. It's quiet, candlelit, the bond thrumming gently between them. Naruto breaks first. "You don't pray much for a priest," he says suddenly. Sasuke, halfway through a sip of tea, raises a brow. "Maybe I'm more of a relic caretaker with good hair." The blonde snorts. But seriously, the demon continues, "Why'd you become one? Doesn't suit you." Sasuke hesitates, gaze lowering. "I didn't choose it. Not really. It was offered. After the fire, after everything else. It was this or nothing. You don't strike me as the type to cling to faith. I'm not, but I do like silence. And no one bothers you in a chapel if you glare hard enough. Naruto grins. There's a beat, then the demon leans forward, elbows on the table. Hypothetically, he starts, what if someone like you fell for a demon? The priest doesn't blink, then someone like me would need therapy. Naruto laughs, surprised, loud, real. Sasuke almost smiles. Almost. Outside, the shadows move. Kabuto is close now, close enough to feel more. He feels the ripple of the bond like a thread through a needle. He's careful, cloaked in a veil of illusion, overseeing where the Jinchuriki watches the two from afar, but not near enough to be noticed. He's hunting, for information, for opportunity, but mostly for power. In hell, the order begins to stir. Madara senses imbalance in the realm beyond but does not yet name it. Obito remains watchful, patient, and Orochimaru? He smiles in his quarters, fingers tapping against a scroll of old names and new magic. He already knows something has shifted. He's just waiting to claim it. Back in the mortal realm, Sasuke rises from the table and turns away, but Naruto suddenly speaks, softly, stopping him in place. I like the kiss. Sasuke doesn't turn. It was an accident. Still, Naruto shrugs. I liked it. A beat. I didn't hate it. The raven head mutters, voice like gravel. The demon smiles, and the space between them shrinks again, quietly, steadily, fate pulling two broken pieces into orbit. In the depths of hell, something, or someone stirs. A breeze passes through the grand hall of the order, though no doors open and no flame dares flicker. Even the walls, carved from obsidian and brimstone, seem to hum with a strange, slow reverence. A shadow crosses the polished floors, slow as snowfall. No announcement, no fanfare, only presence. The demon's robes trail behind him like blackened smoke. His steps make no sound. The court's guards, demons honed in brimfire and fear, step aside as though compelled. His hair is long, ink dark, his face pale and composed. A crescent of crimson rests in each eye, swirling quietly like an ancient tide. He doesn't look at anyone. He doesn't need to. Madara straightens on the throne at the center of the hall, his voice touched with the barest flicker of familiarity. You return, dearest prince. Only then does the figure pause. His gaze, sharp as frost. I heard a storm is brewing, he murmurs. His voice is deep yet soft, lethal, and storms like these often carry old truths back to the surface. Obito bows his head slightly, jaw clenched, but says nothing. Orochimaru stiffens, expression unreadable. The stranger moves forward with grace that could be mistaken for silence itself. What of this bond do you know? He says. Madara doesn't answer the question because he knows the other already has the answers. They will change things, the man continues. Indeed, Madara says, smiling faintly. The man looks away. Orochimaru narrows his eyes as he places the pieces of puzzle together. We will prevail, young prince, fear not. The stranger says nothing, doesn't need to, because the room already knows his name, his great power. Itachi Uchiha, the Prince of Hell. He is not a member of the order. But when he speaks, even Madara listens. He bears the highest title in Hell currently, one not many, but only the important knows. He walks alone. He acts rarely. But when he does, entire legacies burn. Long ago, Fugaku, a noble demon and right-hand man of the great emperor, had ruled with distant pride and firm order after the emperor's death. Makoto, his mortal wife, had loved softer. She believed in the soul. Itachi had loved them both. He had also killed them both. He remembers it every time the flames flicker. Remembers the smell of ash. The sound of his little brother's sobbing, small, confused, alive. In the mortal realm, it is quiet. The chapel blows faintly from its crumbling stained glass windows. The air is warm, the wind gentle. For once, the bond between them doesn't pull in punishment or glee. Instead it hums softly, like breath between ribs. Naruto sits by the candlelight, fingers twisting slowly into the frayed ends of his coat. Sasuke stands nearby, watching. I've been thinking, the blonde starts. The raven head lifts a brow. We didn't mean to kiss last time, but I wanted to. There's a heartbeat of silence. Sasuke doesn't answer, not out of anger, not confusion, but because he wants to say yes. Because he remembers the way Naruto's lips had felt. And more terrifying, he remembers how badly he had wanted more. The demon rises. Their eyes meet. "I want to do it right this time," Naruto says. Sasuke's breath catches, lips parting, but before he can respond, Naruto is already moving. He steps forward, slow but certain. His hand lifts to brush Sasuke's cheek, calloused, clawed fingers so gentle it almost aches. His chains rattles softly at his side. Sasuke tilts into it, and then, their lips meet again. This time, it is not an accident. This time, it is intentional. Naruto leads, pressing gently but firmly, with all the longing and restraint he's buried for days. Sasuke melts into it, stunned by the weight of it, the heat. He grips the blonde's shirt, knuckles white, as their mouths part and find each other again with greater need. It's soft at first, then searing. Naruto's hand slides into the priest's hair, tugging just enough for the man to let out a quiet, involuntary sound. Sasuke's knees nearly buckle. They kiss like the world is holding its breath. Like the bond between them knows this was always inevitable. When they finally part, just inches, their foreheads press together. Breathing hard, shaking, Sasuke's voice is low. "You're dangerous." Naruto grins, eyes half-lidded, voice like silk. "You have no idea." And their lips meet again. Hell is vast, but some chambers echo louder than others. In a room walled by red glass and silence, the Prince of Hell stands alone. His gaze is cast across the mirror's surface, one that does not reflect but reveals. It shimmers faintly like light on the surface of a dark lake, and shows Sasuke in fragments. His tired eyes, his cautious voice, the small, hesitant way he leans toward the blonde-headed demon beside him. Itachi exhales, barely audible. He hadn't meant to look yet. He'd told himself he would wait. But here he is, watching, and the moment his eyes fall on his younger brother, alive, older, changed and yet achingly familiar, his heart stirs for the first time in years. Sasuke stands near Naruto with bared trust in his posture. Their hands brush as they move. Their bond, once raw and volatile, now hums like a tethered flame, burning steadily. Gently, Itachi sees something rare on Sasuke's face. Peace. Naruto grins at something Sasuke mutters under his breath. The priest doesn't smile, but he doesn't pull away either. The prince touches the edge of the glass. "You've grown," he whispers. The mirror ripples. His hand tightens into a fist. "You're both happy. For now." In the mortal realm, the moon hangs heavy, casting fractured light through the chapel's cracked panes. Inside, the candlelight glows warm against worn stone, casting long shadows over the quiet space Naruto and Sasuke now share. They move more easily around each other now. Naruto walks close, too close. His hand brushes against Sasuke's back as he passes, a touch that lingers longer than necessary. Sasuke doesn't stop him. He leans in when Naruto speaks low, and doesn't bother pretending to be unaffected by the closeness. He still doesn't say it, but he doesn't deny it either. He wants, and Naruto. Naruto looks at him like he's made of the last light in a ruined world. The night cracks, and something shifts. The raven head jerks up from the seat, the hair on his arms standing. Naruto straightens too, his fingers already sparking gold. Then, a soft laugh, from nowhere, then everywhere. A figure appears just outside the chapel's broken doors. A silhouette more shadow than flesh, hunched under a hood. Long pale fingers, slitted eyes flashing behind round lenses. He steps forward slowly. "Well," the new demon hums. "Who would have thought you'd actually hide here, sealed demon?" Sasuke steps in front of Naruto instinctively. Then Naruto steps in front of him a second later, growling low. The other demon tilts his head, amused. "Who are you?" Naruto hisses. "Oh my, please excuse my rudeness," the intruder purrs. "My name is Kabuto." Sasuke's hand finds the hilt of the sword at his belt. Useless to humans, maybe, but against cursed beings, it sings. The blonde demon summons flame in one palm. The stranger's grin widens. Kabuto sent by Orochimaru, not just to watch, to interfere. But before either side can strike, a crow screams. Black wings burst from the chapel rafters in a flash. A sleek, black creature dives between them and Kabuto, its feathers etched with flickers of otherworldly power. Kabuto hisses as the bird slashes across his face, forcing him back. "A crow?" Sasuke whispers, but something about it feels warm, familiar. The crow lands on Sasuke's shoulder with a surprising gentleness. Its gaze meets his. Naruto keeps his gaze on the other demon, tense. Kabuto glares at them from the chapel's threshold, licking blood from his lip. "You're not ready yet, priest. But I'll be back." And next time, his eyes narrow on Sasuke and then Naruto. "I won't just be watching." He disappears in a shimmer of smoke and teeth. The crow takes flight again, circles once, then vanishes. The raven head watches it go, breath uneven. I knew that warmth. I felt it before. Naruto doesn't respond at first. He stares at the place Kabuto vanished, jaw tight. Then he turns to Sasuke. Gently, he brushes ash from his shoulder. His hands linger at Sasuke's chest, fingers curling into the fabric of his robe. "That demon was looking at you," Naruto says, voice low. "I know. Why? I don't know." Naruto looks at him, really looks at him. "I hate how that felt," the blonde admits. "Like I couldn't protect you fast enough." Sasuke, startled, blinks at him. Naruto leans in slightly, his hands now flat against Sasuke's chest. "I don't like anyone thinking they can take you from me." Sasuke's throat goes dry. The bond between them tightens, not with punishment, not with force, but with that strange, steady pull of closeness. "You're too close," Sasuke mutters, not moving away. Naruto smirks. "That wasn't a complaint when we kissed. Don't push your luck." Naruto leans in just enough that their noses touch. "You don't hate it." Sasuke's lips twitch. "No, they stand like that for a long time." Naruto's fingers brushing slow circles over Sasuke's back, his other hand at his side, protective and ready. Sasuke doesn't retreat, and in the silence, the demon watches the priest not as the sarcastic man he knows the raven head could be, but as his. The scent of brimstone sharpened as Kabuto limped into the towering obsidian chamber. The court fell into a tense silence. Blood trickled down the side of his face. One of his eyes had nearly swollen shut. Demon ichor stained his robes, and claw marks ran down his jaw like firebrands. His breath came uneven. He was wounded, battered, but unbowed. Obito's voice cracked through the quiet like a whip. "Where the hell have you been?" The Prime Minister didn't speak from the throne. He simply stared down at Kabuto like a blade waiting to be drawn. The injured demon dropped to one knee, fist clenched against the black marble. "I acted alone, my lord." That earned a ripple of murmurs around the chamber. "Alone?" Obito stepped forward, fury flickering behind his mask. "Where? What realm would mark you like that?" Kabuto exhaled, slow, even, and looked up. "I left hell." Gasps echoed. Orochimaru didn't move from his place in the shadows. Madara's eyes narrowed, the ancient red flaring to life. "You disobeyed a direct decree." "I did," Kabuto said. He didn't flinch. "I traced the magical resonance of the bonded pair, the priest and the exiled demon. I feared their link was growing too strong, and no action was being taken. I followed the signature into the mortal realm." "And what?" Madara said, voice like stone cracking, "gave you the authority to act without consent from this council." The battered demon hesitated just a second too long. Obito advanced, grabbing him by the collar and dragging him upright. "Who sent you?" "No one," Kabuto said immediately. "I acted alone." Loyalty dripped from him like blood. If he felt pain, he buried it beneath unyielding conviction. His voice remained calm, unwavering. "I knew I'd be punished. I accepted that the moment I crossed the gate." Madara's expression remained unreadable. "You tampered with forces beyond your rank," he says coldly. "You endangered the balance we still hold. What did you encounter that left you so broken?" Kabuto's jaw tightened. "A crow. Not natural. Old, dark magic. It intercepted me before I could find them." "You're lucky to have returned at all," Obito spat. Madara turned to the guards. "Take him." The guards immediately seized him by the arms. Kabuto spoke once more, though blood filled his mouth. "I never meant harm to the order. I sought only to protect its interests. A lesson in loyalty does not give you the right to gamble with consequences beyond your understanding," Madara said, his voice suddenly sharp. "You will be confined for a cycle of 13 moons. No access to the mortal realm. No private audiences. No magic. And no name," the Prime Minister added. "Until we deem you worthy of it again." The chamber buzzed with power. From the shadows, the serpentine demon finally stepped forward. His face was perfectly composed. "How disappointing," he said, tone laced with mock regret. "I did warn him once, but ambition can make the weak reckless." Obito looked to him. You knew? Orochimaru shook his head with a graceful frown. If I had known his intent, I would have stopped him myself. Kabuto did not look back at his master. His silence was obedient. He was loyal, even in disgrace. Madara gave a single nod. The guards dragged the demon away, blood leaving a slick trail behind him. Only once the door slammed shut did Orochimaru allow the briefest smile to touch the edge of his lips. The order believed the problem had been contained, but Orochimaru had already sent the infection deep into the root. The fire was everywhere. It roared in through the windows first, licking up the velvet curtains with glee. It spread over the wooden floors in waves. Smoke choked the breath from the room. Sasuke was ate again. The house was screaming. His mother's voice, choked, distant, called his name. Then the sound of a body hitting the floor. He turned the corner of the hall from where he hid, just in time to see a figure, bathed in firelight, shadowed by smoke, and for the first time, the figure turned to look at him. Eyes dark and deep and full of something eternal. The face still blurred by the haze of dream and smoke, but closer than ever before. So close. Sasuke felt the scream rise in his throat. He shots up, choking on air. The world snapped back. Cold chapel stone, moonlight through stained glass, the scent of candles and arms. Around him, Naruto. Shish, I got you, Naruto whispered, voice rough with sleep and concern. He didn't hesitate. He pulled the other into his chest, pressing a warm hand to the back of his neck, thumb stroking gently. Sasuke shuddered. His entire body trembled from the aftershock. But Naruto didn't flinch. He just held him tighter, breath fanning over Sasuke's temple. You're safe, Naruto said. You're not alone. The words unlatched something in the priest's chest. Slowly, his fingers curled into Naruto's shirt. Clutching, kneading, the silence stretched, fragile but alive. Then the blonde kissed his forehead. It was featherlight, then his cheek, then, hesitantly, his lips. It was soft, careful, barely a brush, a question. Sasuke answered it by tilting his chin and kissing him back. And this time when they parted, he pulled him back and deepened it. Their mouths locked, no longer cautious. The raven head leaned in, lips parting against the demons with quiet hunger. Naruto groaned softly, surprised but thrilled, and slid his hand along Sasuke's waist, pulling him closer. Sasuke let him. Their kiss grew rougher. Tongues met, teeth grazed. The priest tangled his fingers in Naruto's messy blonde hair, tugging slightly as their mouths worked in sync. His other hand gripped the demon's bare shoulder, anchoring himself as if afraid the moment might dissolve. The blonde pushed forward, guiding them back onto the bed, hovering just above. His body slotted against Sasuke's perfectly. Their breaths heaved against each other, lips parting only to draw in air before crashing back again. Sasuke bit softly at Naruto's bottom lip. The demon hissed, then grinned into the kiss and kissed him harder. Heat built between them, every movement sparking fire beneath skin. When they finally broke apart, foreheads touching, both were breathless. The blonde spoke first, voice low. You really went in with that kiss. The raven head blinked, dazed. Don't make me regret it. Naruto chuckled, the sound rough and pleased. Too late. They lay there like that, wrapped in each other, hearts pounding in sync. Neither says a word about Sasuke's panic attack. Naruto understands, through the bond which ties them together. Itachi sits still as a corpse, eyes locked on the mirror in front of him. His fingers, steepled beneath his chin, trembled. Just slightly. He had seen Sasuke break before. Had watched the nightmares, the quiet panic, the pain that bled from the boy in sleep. But he had never seen someone kiss his brother's fear away. It was enough to make his heart stir. You're getting closer to the truth, Itachi whispered. The fire, our bloodline, what I did. He closed his eyes, the weight of it crashing back into him. He saw again their mother, screaming at Sasuke to get far away while flames closed in on her. He remembered the blade in his hand. He remembered the moment their father knelt holding their mother. He remembered choosing death for them. He remembered the promise from his father. And now, here was his brother, kissing the blonde-headed demon like salvation. I should come to you, Itachi whispered. You deserve to know, especially now that you dream of a deeper bond with the demon, Naruto Uzumaki. He looked down. The crow perched beside him tilted its head. The true heir of hell's empty throne. When hell was still ruled by strength and honor, not bureaucracy and warlords, Minato Namikaze, the Golden Flame, had been emperor. He had been brilliant and terrifying, radiant in battle and wise in peace. His wife, Kushina Uzumaki, bore power like molten chains, the only one who could temper his wrath. And their son, Naruto Uzumaki, was born into legacy. His very birth shook the underworld. The child's aura bent shadows, turned even high demons to kneel in instinctual reverence. But that awe turned to fear. They died. Minato and Kushina were murdered in their private chamber, by betrayal, by jealousy, by someone close. The child was smuggled out by those still loyal, but they were killed brutally by the order, and young Naruto was sealed away at a mere age of 120, his surname long erased from the records, hidden in a realm with no life. Before he died, the emperor entrusted the throne, not to a council, not to the order, but to Fugaku Uchiha, his closest friend and most loyal general. Rule until my son has grown old enough. Fugaku agreed. The Uchiha was one to travel the mortal realm often, and that led him to fall in love with a beautiful mortal woman, Mikoto, who was then bonded to him by the guardian chain. Mikoto was kind, even when she first learned about his true identity. She, being human, stayed in the mortal realm whilst Fugaku continued to travel back and forth. Naruto was sealed not too long before Fugaku took upon the throne officially. The order's decision was firm, and the newly appointed emperor had no say in the matter. Several centuries passed and Itachi was their firstborn, followed by Sasuke, who came a mere 7 years later. The two children had demon blood thick enough to burn. Itachi, the eldest, held full demonic abilities, and Sasuke held the perfect balance between his mother's mortal blood and his father's demonic blood. Now the older of the two not only remains to watch over his little brother but to watch over Naruto, whose throne sat empty ever since the death of Fugaku. Until now. Now, the two were drawn together, by fate, by bond, by heart. Itachi watched them, watched Naruto press his lips to Sasuke's trembling brow, watched Sasuke lean into it, exhale as if saved. He makes you feel safe, Itachi murmured. Just as I once tried to. The crow beside him tilted its head. They truly deserve to know everything. But I must plan carefully. The order would rip you apart before they give up their stolen reign. He looked at the mirror again. At least now, he whispered, you two won't face it alone. Sasuke and Naruto didn't speak much the next morning, even after Sasuke had calmed down last night. Not because there was nothing to say, but because there was too much. Naruto had felt the priest twist in panic in his sleep, then bolt upright with a cry, eyes wild and sweat-soaked. He'd pulled him close without question, whispering into his hair, grounding him. Sasuke had clung to him like a drowning man. Now they were sat at the table, chewing on some bread before Sasuke murmurs, I saw the fire again. Naruto's hand reached to his in silence, silently awaiting for him to continue if he wished. Sasuke shifted closer, curling his fingers around the others. This time, it wasn't just fire. Something was alive, watching me. I think it killed them. I think it knew me. Naruto didn't speak. He just pressed a kiss to his temple. Soft, reassuring. Sasuke tilted his face up. And this time again, he was the one who closed the distance. Their mouths met. No accident, no tension, just need. The kiss was slow, made of bruised hearts and slow-blooming trust. Naruto's hands came up to cradle his face, gentle despite his claws. Their breaths quickened, bodies pressed close, they melted into each other's heat, the bond pulsing warmly, welcoming the contact instead of punishing it. Sasuke's fingers curled into Naruto's shirt, and Naruto groaned quietly into the kiss, trying not to lose control. By the time they pulled apart, their foreheads rested together. Their chests heaved in unison. You kissed me again, Naruto said, voice low and odd. Sasuke gave him a sideways look. Don't make it a thing. Naruto grinned. It is a thing. Sasuke rolled his eyes and shoved him off, but didn't move away. That night, the priest walked barefoot across the old stone chapel floor. His fingers tingled. His heartbeat was too fast. His reflection in the cracked glass showed a flicker, barely noticeable, but there. A red glint in his eyes. A glow not from the moonlight, but from within. He didn't recognize it fully. Not yet, but he knew something was shifting. The more the demon touched him, the more he touched back, the more that part of him, part buried by flames, began to rise. And somewhere deep in hell's shadows, Itachi felt it. Sasuke was awakening. Soon, he'd know who he really was. It started in a dream, but not like the ones the priest usually had. There was no fire, no screaming, no suffocating smoke. Instead, there was silence. And then light, not holy light, but infernal, golden and violet, coiling like molten glass around a dark throne. Naruto stood at its center. He was resplendent, not in chains, not snarling or lost, but calm, regal. He had horns that gleamed like topaz, and behind him stretched a kingdom, reborn in warmth and worship, filled with loyal subjects prostrating at his feet. Beside him, not kneeling, never kneeling, stood Sasuke. They were equals. The vision shimmered, millions of flickering flames and whispers curling like smoke around them. Demons cheered, the land trembled in reverence. And through it all, Naruto's hand never left Sasuke's. When Sasuke woke, he was gasping because the vision had felt real. Too real. And he wasn't alone because across from him on the chapel cot, the blonde blinked awake at the same time. Cerulean eyes darkened into cobalt, sharp, like he'd seen it too. "Did you?" "I saw it," Naruto muttered, voice hushed. Every part of it. They sat in silence for a moment, the morning light barely touching the edges of the ruined stained glass above. Neither spoke of what it meant. Not yet, but it clung to them, the future they saw, impossible yet inevitable, wrapped in power and proximity. Sasuke stood to pace, still shaken. But then, his hand sparked. No, not spark. Surged. It was like something cracked inside his chest. A pulse of heat and shadow exploded out of him, slamming into the walls of the chapel. Symbols flared across the old floor, etched in power he had never learned, let alone understood, so his breath hitched. What is? The raven head stumbled back, eyes wide as the wooden altar cracked in two from the force of his own magic. "Naruto," he gasped. Naruto, who watched in shock, was already moving, already beside him, already holding his arms to keep him steady. "Breathe," the demon murmured, voice low and firm. "Baby, breathe. Don't fight it. Just let it pass through you." "I'm not supposed to have this," Sasuke said through clenched teeth. "I'm not. This isn't human." "I know," Naruto whispered. "That's why it's terrifying." Their eyes met, and that's why we need to accept that it's real. Naruto's hands didn't tremble, not once, not when the other's skin glowed faintly with heat, not when the windows vibrated with every breath he took. The blonde only held him, guiding him down until the energy cooled, until the pulse eased. Until Sasuke was still again. "I don't understand," Sasuke said softly, as Naruto knelt with him. "I'm not supposed to be anything but." "Maybe that was never true," Naruto whispered. "Maybe it was buried." Sasuke shook his head, dizzy. "I need answers." The demon nodded. "Then let's go get them." They left the chapel under cover of overcast skies, Naruto cloaking them in minor magic to avoid attention. Sasuke's childhood home wasn't too far, but he hadn't returned since the fire. Since everything. Now, he did. The house was little more than a blackened husk nestled among wild, overgrown ivy. The walls were charred, the windows shattered. But as they walked the ruined hallway, Naruto watched Sasuke with quiet reverence, like the walls still held ghosts only Sasuke could see. "Here," the priest said at last, kneeling near what used to be a back room. "This was my father's study." They dug carefully, pushing away scorched beams and ash. And beneath it, half buried in soot, was something hard. Solid, metal. Naruto brushed it off. A bicolored, red and white fan. Obsidian etched around its frame. The demon's blood went cold. "What is it?" Sasuke asked, watching his expression. Naruto stared at the symbol, stunned. "This is your family's?" The priest nodded, unsure. "It was on the walls. On my father's ring. I think it's our family symbol. Uchiha. I rarely use my last name ever since the fire." Naruto's throat bobbed. "Uchiha," he whispered. "Sasuke. Do you know what that means?" The raven head frowned. "No?" The demon turned to face him fully, firelight flickering behind his cerulean eyes. The Uchihas were one of the noble clans of hell. They were one of the most powerful demons. They ruled once. The last emperor was an Uchiha, though I don't remember his name. Sasuke stared at him. "I thought they were gone," Naruto continued. "Most wiped out during the rebellion. The last to rule died, or so we thought." He stepped closer, placing the crest in Sasuke's hand. "You're not just someone with a spark," Naruto said, voice quiet. "You're an Uchiha. You are descended from the line that once ruled hell." Sasuke's mouth opened, but no words came. He looked at the symbol in his hand, then at Naruto, whose face was unreadable. Then, Naruto smiled, just a little. "That vision," the demon murmured. "You weren't standing beside me because of the bond. You were standing beside me because you belong there. The only mystery remains is why I was crowned emperor." Sasuke stared. The demon stares back, their hands slightly trembling, but not from fear, from something else entirely. Naruto reached for his fingers, and Sasuke, like now a routine, didn't pull away. That's all for now. If you enjoy, then please like, share and do comments.